Hey guys, from this video I am going to be starting a new mini series on solid principles, and in this particular video I am going to be talking the intuition behind solid principles from a human perspective and then from a software perspective. So let's first make it clear what I mean from a perspective. So what are we looking at here? So we're looking at changes that are imminent in the near future. So how we as a human see those changes and how we react to it. So we are looking at that. And similarly, we are looking at how we see the changes from the software point of view and how we try to react to it. So by the end of this, you will see that there are a lot of similarities between the human perspective and the software perspective. Because at the end, the idea is same, right? Changes are imminent and you have to adapt to those changes. So we will try to make use of the human perspective and see how those ideas of adapting to changes from a human point of view actually fit well in the software world as well. So let's start with the human perspective. Let's start with these lines by Charles Darwin: survival of the fittest, and it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent one. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. So this is the famous lines from the theory of evolution, right? So how species evolved? The fittest ones evolved, and the ones who were adaptable to change. So if we look at these two lines closely, we can infer that survival is basically adapting to change, and the species which are fittest are basically the ones who are the most change tolerant species. So this is just for a kickstart on getting the idea of which species can evolve, those who can adapt to change, right? So now in the nature, that in the world that we live, change is the only constant. Now as a human being, we want to learn many things, right? So let's take an example, like I may want to learn to play cricket. So currently I'm not a player, so if I want to learn cricket, I will have to change my mindset, tweak my habits, get into discipline to be a cricket player, right? So to be able to do something new, we have to change. But we don't want to take those efforts. Why we don't want to take those efforts? Because we are in a sort of comfort zone. So what is the comfort zone? Why are we in a comfort zone? So we are in a comfort zone because majorly I see two things. We fear the unknown, right? So we are not sure if even despite the efforts that we will take, we will become a cricketer or not. We are not sure of that. And instead we fear that in the process of taking efforts, we may end up losing what we are currently doing. Like let's say if I am studying right now and I give my efforts to become a cricketer, so I fear not becoming a cricketer, and also I fear that I may lose what I'm doing right now. So I may not be able to pay attention to studies and I will lose my studies, right? So these two things tend to keep us in the comfort zone. But again, change is the only constant, right? So if we want to adapt to changes, we have to take efforts. We have to get out of this comfort zone. So basically right now in the pandemic, we all had to work from home, right? So if we couldn't work from home, it will affect our work, and if it will have a direct impact on our career. So we need to learn to adapt to changes. So what is the solution now? So I tried to think about this problem on my personal front, and I think there are two approaches to this. Like there are two ways to tackle this problem. The first one is prepare for the change beforehand, and the second is minimally adapt to change. So what I mean by prepare for change beforehand. So if you see that there is a change coming, like if you see an imminent change, you should try to prepare whatever you can before that change comes, right? Let's take an example. Let's suppose I am moving to a new location for a job opportunity, right? So I know that I have to move to a new job location. Let's say I'm moving to a new city completely, like let's say 2k kilometers apart 2k kilometers apart from my current city. So before moving, I can research about the gym, I can research about the nearby market, I can research about nearby hospitals, etc., and make a list. So instead of moving and then researching about these things when I am in actual need of them, I will before and only research about these things and make a list of it. So this is what I call prepare for change beforehand. What what this will help us is that this will reduce the time later once I start living at the new location. So I call this one as gracefully adapting to the change. Now, what I mean by minimally adapting to change, when I know the exact reason for change, like for in this example, I know that I am moving for a new job opportunity. Once I know the exact reason, I should allow the changes which evolve only due to that reason and not any side effects. So let's say if I'm moving to a new job opportunity and the shift that I got there is a night shift, and before I was used to working in a day shift, right? So I should only allow changing of my daily routine after moving there and not my other activities like eating preferences or maybe setting up room. So I would actually set up my room exactly as I have in my current location. So I would still manage to keep the vibe same, and I would thus minimize the changes. So the only thing that I would change is the work routine. And why I would change that? Because that is the reason for the change, right? So this is what I call minimally adapting to change. So this was the human perspective. Now let's look at software perspective. So this is a quote by Scott Rosenberg. He is an American journalist who was sort of interviewing and doing some observational experiments with the open source team who made the Chandler app, which is basically like a calendar app. So what he says is software is easy to make except when you want it to do something new. And then of course there follows a corollary. The only software that's worth making is a software that does something new. So what he essentially means is that for a given initial set of features, when you start, the software that you will make will be easy. But as you start demanding, or the stakeholders start demanding new features. Why will the stakeholders start demanding new features? Because they may have started gaining profit and they may want to add new features to sustain the demands of the users. Or basically they may want to make a complete new plan, that is the business requirements may be changing. So you see here also change is the only constant. Business requirements keep changing frequently. So if we are not capable of changing requirements or adding new, we may end up losing our current as well as potential clients or consumers. So now let's see what is the comfort zone idea in the software world. In the human perspective, we saw that fear takes the form of comfort zone. Which fears? The fear of the unknown and the fear of losing what we have currently. So what do we fear in the software zone? Which fears are making up the comfort zone idea here? So let's say if I change the entire system, what do I fear? I fear the risk of breaking the entire system. I fear propagating changes in the entire system. Let's say I had a change in the module A, and let's say module B depends on module A. So there may be propagating changes in module B also. Let's say module C depends on module B, and so on. So there may be propagating changes in a lot of module. So I fear that due to one single small change, I will have to incorporate many changes. And due to those changes, I may have to write or tweak unit tests for multiple modules, right? And due to the same reason, I will have to review the entire code as well as I will have to review or retest the entire system. Maybe due to some changes in the build flow, like maybe the change that we did caused some changes in the build flow also. Maybe we have to rebuild and see the process, or maybe we have to tweak the building process. Also, time is wasted in understanding and explaining changes to a new developer, that is a new joinee or a developer in another team. So if I am the developer who did the change, I will have to explain other developers, other peers in my team, or a new joinee who is trying to have a helping hand in my project, right? So there will be this time wasted in understanding and explaining the propagated changes. For the exact change, it's okay. We need to explain it to the team. We need everyone to understand it. But explaining the side effect, the changes which were not even needed, which just came as a result of a single change. There will be a lot of time wasted in those, right? So this is the comfort zone. So I fear the happening of any one of the scenarios. And as a result, I want to do minimal changes. Because at the end, I also want to do changes because the business requirements may change and I want to sustain my software as per those requirements. And on the other hand, I also fear the happening of any of these scenarios. So I will decide to have few and as little changes as possible to my entire system. Now let's have a look at the solutions from the same two principles that we mentioned in the human perspective beforehand. So design your code in such a way that it is easy to add new features. Like while writing a piece of code, think about what parameters can change in future and handle them accordingly. So like at the current scenario, there may be some things which you are assuming that won't change. So ask yourself double questions. Double question yourself that what if this changes? So you will get answer that what all things can change and write your code accordingly. So this is the prepare beforehand step. What was the second thing? The second thing was minimally adapt to change. When we have an appropriate and exact reason for a change, when we thoroughly know which feature we are adding and why we are adding, so we should be practically able to change only that part concerning to that feature, right? And have fewer side effects. Why I am saying here fewer side effects? Because in practical, like in practice, you may not be able to completely completely have no side effects, right? You will have some, but you want to minimize them, so you should have fewer side effects. So now let's see how these very two principles, that is prepare beforehand and minimally adapt to change, which fit very well in the human perspective as well as software perspective, are the very basic fundamental ideas behind solid principles. So solid principles allows us to prepare beforehand and minimally adapt to change. So these principles are nothing but generic guidelines or things that you should do, but there is no imperative here. You are not required to follow these principles, but in theory you should. So what I mean by that is, these principles are not like just use them as it is. It's like general ideas. Sometimes or someone will be able to use them 100% in their sort of system, while other organization may be able to use them 50%, someone will be able to use them 10%, but all will be able to use them at some level of the spectrum, right? So in theory you should use them, and in practice the level of using will depend based on the system, but in general these will help you to incorporate changes efficiently and easily. So the basic two ideas, prepare beforehand and minimally adapt to change, are the ideas behind the evolution of solid principles. So this is the intuition behind solid principles. The core benefit that we get is we are able to incorporate changes efficiently and very easily. Now there is one more benefit that we get as a result of this. It also allows to make our code more readable and understandable, which essentially saves both time and human efforts needed to maintain it. So this is the overview of solid principles, like very basic overview, why were they evolved, how they came into existence, and what they do, what are the benefits of using them. So now in the upcoming videos we will be making a video for each of these solid principle: single responsibility, open closed, list code substitution, interface segregation, and dependency inversion. So we will have 5 upcoming videos, and each video we will be talking about the theory of the principle, and then we will be implementing that principle in TypeScript in an object oriented fashion. So generally speaking, these are language agnostic principles, right? But for the sake of the video, I am going to be implementing them in TypeScript in an object oriented fashion. But for even a non-object oriented language, you may still be able to use them, but at a different spectrum level. Maybe you will use some internal features of the language, and that feature itself will fit under some principle here, right? And you will see that the design patterns that develop, language specific design patterns or general design patterns, are all developed due to the combination of these principles. So, and these principles, the basic idea behind this principle is the solving of the change scenario that I mentioned before, trying to solve changes because we need to adapt to change for improvement. This is the fundamental problem that we were trying to solve, and we ended up by making guidelines or principles which later were made very specific to be applied for recurrent problems and were called design patterns. So that's it for this video, and stay tuned in for the upcoming parts. Hope you liked it. Thank you.